Today, we're cracking open a cold case file. On the surface, it looks like a simple family tragedy, a sudden, unexpected death. But some files have secrets buried deep inside them. And this one? It held a truth so dark it would eventually blow the whole official story wide open. Yeah, for 3 whole years, that was the official story. Case closed. The file was stamped, archived, done. But then, boom. March 2026, a single confession just completely upends everything. So to really get what happened here, we've got to rewind. Let's go all the way back to the start. All right, so the first page in our file is dated April 25th, 2023, coming out of Chandrapur, Maharashtra. The victim, a 45-year-old head constable, a man named Arya Ballawar. So it seemed like just a normal day on the job. Head Constable Ballawar is at the collectorate building doing his duty when he suddenly just collapses. He felt uneasy, and then he was down. They rushed him to the hospital, but it was too late. The doctors did everything they could, but they couldn't save him. So the post-mortem comes back, and it pretty much confirms what everyone was thinking, a tragic but natural death. The report is clear, no signs of foul play. The family, of course, is just heartbroken. And right there in the middle of it all is his 19-year-old daughter, Arya, who, by all accounts, was completely devastated. And just like that, the case was closed. File shut. Okay, so fast forward 3 years. Life goes on, right? The case file is just sitting there, gathering dust on a shelf somewhere. And then in March of 2026, something happens that just shatters the silence. One man walks into a police station, and the entire foundation of this closed case just crumbles. And the confession? It comes from Arya's husband, Ashish. And what he says is an absolute bombshell. He tells the police point blank that Arya Ballawar didn't die of natural causes. He says he was murdered. And the killer? Well, it was the last person anyone would have ever suspected. So this new information completely changes how we look at that morning. We have to go back. That milkshake, the one Arya supposedly made for her dad out of love, it wasn't an act of love at all. It was the murder weapon. It was how she delivered a deadly poison. Okay, so the confession gives us the how. That's a huge piece of the puzzle, but it opens up an even bigger, more disturbing question. Why? Why would a daughter murder her own father? When we dug back into the evidence, 2 really powerful motives started to surface. And the motives were, well, a toxic mix of 2 things. On one hand, you've got freedom. Arya felt trapped by her father's strict rules, and she wanted to be with her boyfriend, Ashish. But then there was the other part, cold, hard greed. You see, she knew that if her father died while in service, she could get his government job on compassionate grounds. From Jian's perspective, he was just being a protective dad. He started noticing his daughter's behavior changing, so he did what a lot of parents might do. He set some curfews, put some restrictions in place. But for Arya, who was apparently pretty stubborn and used to getting her own way, this didn't feel like protection. It felt like a prison. And in her mind, her dad wasn't her protector anymore. He was just an obstacle. So you have to wonder, where does an idea like this even come from? Well, it turns out it came from her lover, Ashish. See, he had actually gotten his own job on the police force the exact same way, on compassionate grounds after his father died. So he wasn't just a supporter of the plan, his own life story became the deadly blueprint for the crime. Yeah, this was no crime of passion. Not at all. This was a cold, premeditated conspiracy with a whole cast of characters. So let's break it down. Let's look at the anatomy of this whole plot and see how a supposedly perfect crime started to unravel. It's like a chain of events, really. At the top, you have the mastermind, Arya. She's the one who hatches the plan. Her father has to go. Then you have the accomplice, Ashish. He's on board, and he's the one who agrees to find the poison. He gets his 13-year-old cousin involved, believe it or not, to find a dealer. That leads them to a supplier, a guy named Monty, who sells them the poison for 5,000 rupees. And then, the final, horrific step, the execution. Arya serving her dad that deadly milkshake. And after the murder, what did she do? Well, just 1 month after her father's funeral, Arya marries Ashish. She was finally free. And if you look at her social media from that time, it's just unreal. It's a stream of parties, travel, romantic videos. There's zero sign of grief, no remorse. It was a full-on celebration of her new, blood-soaked freedom. But, a relationship that starts with a murder, it's probably not built to last. It was all a ticking time bomb. In 2025, Arya gets the job she killed for. She starts her police training. But right around the same time, Ashish gets fired from his police job for misconduct. And that right there, that was the turning point. The whole thing started to fall apart. And this is so important to understand. Ashish didn't confess out of guilt. He confessed out of pure, shattered ego. As Arya's career was taking off, his was ending in disgrace. He started to feel like he'd been used, like he was just a burden to her now. The arguments got worse and worse, and he basically decided, if my life is ruined, I'm not going down alone. So with the confession, the police were able to arrest everyone involved. Case closed. For real this time. But just knowing who did it isn't enough. To really understand a crime this disturbing, we need to dive into the psychology behind it. What allows a daughter to murder her own father? Well, there's actually a word for this. Patricide. The act of killing one's father. Now, a lot of times these cases are linked to histories of terrible abuse, like self-defense. But not this one. This was a cold, calculated decision, fueled by this toxic mix of greed and a sense of just being entitled to what she wanted. This points to a psychological process called moral disengagement. It's basically when a person convinces themselves that the normal rules of right and wrong just don't apply to them in a certain situation. So while most of us would see a parent's death as an unimaginable tragedy, Arya's moral compass was so completely broken that she was able to reframe it in her mind as an opportunity. And that leads us to maybe the most chilling part of all, cognitive distortion. It's a pattern where you start to see reality in a completely warped way. For Arya, her father stopped being a person. He wasn't her dad anymore. He was dehumanized in her mind and became a simple, non-human obstacle standing in her path. And once that empathy is completely gone, anything becomes possible. And in the end, it all came crashing down because of this single, destructive mindset. Ashish's confession, it wasn't about getting justice for his father-in-law. It was a last-ditch act of revenge against the woman he felt had used and betrayed him. His whole attitude was, if I go down, you go down with me. He was willing to destroy his own life just to make sure he destroyed hers too. And that's really what this whole tragic case leaves us with. It forces you to ask a really unsettling question about human nature. Once a person loses that fundamental ability to feel empathy, what's left to stop them? What barrier is there to prevent them from seeing the people they're supposed to love as nothing more than an obstacle in their way?